snowy.
Alright. I think the sound should be all fine and good. For everyone who is here, you're all awesome. I'm not going to be looking at chat as much, guys, because this is a podcast. I want to be focusing on the discussion with Arkin. Again, the music, it's just kind of there as bed music. If it's too loud, let me know. I'll drop down. I want it to be there, but I don't want it to be overpowering like my normal streams. Also, the gameplay you guys are going to be seeing, I'm not actually playing. This is from previous streams. So that way I can also focus on the discussion. I'm not clickety click away. The theory says you're still quiet, Arkin.
Oh yeah?
Are you sure about that, the theory?
Maybe it's because the sexiness of the voice is
It's
too
just too
strong.
much.
No matter how much you turn me up, dude, it can't be touched.
Can't be touched.
It's okay, it's okay. I get that all the time.
I just realized something. I was gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna turn off my Guild Wars 2 info because it's not really pertinent to the podcast. And then I realized that the highlight I have up behind, or the VOD behind me, has it up
What?
there. So even if I remove it on my end, it's still there.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, just keep it.
Well, yeah,
I think it'd be funny.
I'm keeping it now because I can't do anything about it.
Aw.
All right. Well, I think everything is fine and well, so I'll get this rolling, and then there's that. So yeah, I was talking with Arkin. Arkin and I have been wanting to do this. Oh, my voice is way louder. Okay. Oh no, I deleted it.
Probably should have done this beforehand.
We probably should have done this beforehand.
Well, that's okay.
I completely lost the... Oh, there it is. I found it.
Okay.
Okay, we make this full screen. And that didn't work. Put this over here.
Just a quick question before we get into the podcast with you. Do you have you ever tried axe instead of like a greatsword? Just saying, the damage is pretty ridiculous.
Axe instead of greatsword, yes. The kit is different. Like, they're both effective, but you can't really compare them that much.
Okay.
Like, the kit... Sorry, yeah, the kits are just too different. You get stuff with the greatsword that you can't do with the axe. And vice versa. Alright, make this smaller.
Fair enough.
Let's see. Just cut this out. Yeah, I guess the theory has a point. I can just cut this out of the VOD after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
There, I think I've got you in a good point. Good spot.
Yeah, I'm sure we're good.
Alright. So, now we can start, I think, hopefully. Alright, so there we go. And yeah, guys, I'm not going to be as interactive with chat as I normally am, because, again, I want to stay focused on the conversation. It is well, podcast, vodcast, whatever you want to call it. The gameplay you're seeing is not me playing at the moment. Again, for, concentration purposes, it's just so you guys have something to watch, and it's not just us blabbing. And damn it, I need to stop doing that. There we go.
What's that?
I pulled up a window I was using for diagnostics.
Ah.
Okay, we're good. I think we've got everything taken care of. So let's get to it. So Arkin and I have been wanting to do this for a little while. Basically, what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be looking at what just kind of balance things. We're going to be talking from the perspective of a warrior and a guardian, respectively. And just kind of overall balance things that we think could be improved, need to be tuned down, just general state of the game type things. We're not going to be doing like the state of the game or any of that, but we're just going to kind of, speak our mind, see what's up. So, Arkin, I guess go ahead and lead it off.
Alrighty, sweet. Let's do that. I can really only speak from a structured PvP point, since that's pretty much the gist of what I play. It's obviously a little different because some of the skills are split, and in world versus world structured PvP and all that wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I will say that there have been quite a few issues that I've found, and I would like them to be addressed, and hopefully soon. One of them, one of the main ones, is just the constant application of ground target AoE.
Okay.
It's more overpowering than single target right now, and obviously for me personally, that makes zero sense. You know, especially just in whatever game you play. But again, like and it also completely obscures your view when you're fighting on a point. So I don't know if any you guys have seen any videos, or if you've seen any videos, Shin. Like for instance, at one of the major tournaments we had last year, where you even said, one of the guys said, "Well, here comes the petting zoo," right?
Yeah.
I could not tell what the hell was going on. I was looking at there, going, all I see is each side has got about 8 spirits, and there's a couple of players in there, but I can't tell what's going on. So that needs to be addressed for me personally, first and foremost, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. That's one of the things that I've told a number of people who have been new to the game, or people asking, hey, why doesn't Guild Wars 2 have a very large audience on Twitch or whatever? And one of the things that I've addressed that to is Guild Wars 2 is, unless you know what's going on, typically it's very hard to watch, especially in the structured PvP setups. Like what you were saying there with the petting zoo, there's just so much stuff flying around and so many bodies and animations that it's hard to really get what's going on. You can't really tell what the big plays are. Now, I mean, the game mode itself, Conquest, doesn't really help that situation because everyone is concentrated to one point, so it kind of exacerbates the issue. But even still, when you've got, say, a necromancer versus, say, spirit ranger, there's just so much stuff flying around that you're not really you can't tell because everything is just everywhere. So many particle effects, so many animations from all the different models that it really obscures the vision. And like with the ground target AoE is it's one of those things where it may not be too much, but it's too flashy. Like the combination of all the effects brings it to the point where it's like you can't tell what's going on just because there are so many overlaid effects on one another that they may not look too flashy by themselves, but when you start stacking them up on top of each other, like guardian symbols and fire fields from warriors and all of those things, that it starts to get cluttered and it makes it very hard to watch. In World v World, it's not as big of an issue. Like I can speak a bit more from a World v World perspective because that's what I do a lot. It's not as big of an issue in World v World because you're spread out a lot. You've got a lot more space to operate. So the problem isn't as evident in World v World because of that space, but in SPVP, in Conquest modes, yes, I definitely agree with you that there's a lot of clutter and it definitely needs to be tuned down.
Oh, absolutely. I would say, and I don't know if you remember, but they actually toned it down already.
Yeah, they did.
They did, and it still feels like there's still too much going on, and I can't. Again, I've been 99% structured PvP since I played this game. That's what I like to do. Is we like to play world versus world, which is great. We all like to play, we have different play styles, but
yeah, that
was one of the bigger issues again, and part of that was the whole. There's really no point in specializing in single target damage. Like if, for instance, like in this game, say for instance your AoEs do like 90% of the damage that your single target does, then why bother, speccing into something like that when you can just cover a whole point and pretty much guaranteed a skill shot. So yeah, that also needs to be looked at. But from all points, every class has a form of AoE that may or may not be considered, much stronger than their single target damage. And another thing is that one of the things that I've noticed is that all AoEs are not created equal. Marks are not the same as symbols. Symbols are not the same as bombs.
Yep.
And so on and so forth. So the radius of these AoEs should be different because their effects, damage, control, and all this other wonderful stuff is much different. So that should also be looked at.
Yeah, the AoE situation, AoE versus single target, I think right now they do have a pretty decent balance, but there are a few that, like you said, are a bit more off balance, out of whack. Engineer bombs are definitely a good example. Even with the recent nerf, I'd still say that the Earthshaker on the warrior is also still pretty ridiculous. As I was saying before the patch, for anyone who had been around my stream, asking how the nerf, like how bad the nerfs were going to be for the warrior on the hammer. I was telling everyone they weren't going to do anything, and because they weren't that big of an issue and they didn't hit the hard hitting skills. And sure enough, that's what happened. Like, I can't really tell a difference between pre and post nerf. But yeah, another one, like the Guardian symbols definitely seem like they're right in the good spot as far as like your damage and your boons and your conditions and whatnot. But you've got the engineer bombs, you've got the what are some other ones that are really nasty? Oh, necro wells.
Those hurt.
Yeah, necro wells, necro staff abilities. I definitely agree with you that there is some balancing stuff with how much damage an AoE does versus how much damage a single target ability does, and yeah, definitely could be reworked to where AoEs do less because of the fact that they affect so many more people. But then again, you'd have to look at the fact that certain weapons are entirely AoE, like the necro staff.
Guardian staff is one of them too, actually. Their auto attack is AoE.
Yeah, the Guardian staff, the necro staff. A lot of the staff kits are heavily AoE. Like Mesmer, not so much. Mesmer has one AoE on there, but yeah, it's one of those tricky situations where it's like you can nerf it, but you're nerfing an entire weapon. And that's not necessarily the best thing to do because that's literally half of someone's skills at any given time.
Absolutely, but again, it's just I think it would be for the betterment if they did something like that for pretty much the majority of staff, kits out there. Only because, I mean, when you have AOE as almost as strong as single target in that regard, it starts to become out of control.
Yeah.
Especially since you're not really giving up much. You're just, spamming. That's essentially what it is for a lot of skills. And I forgot to add, like, grenades. While that is more skill shot than a lot of AoE skills, it's still, in my opinion, pretty spammy and not as equal as, the others.
Yeah. Grenades are definitely one of those ones where it hurts a lot. I'd say if they were to do kind of an across-the-board AoE nerf, that grenades should be hit less because of that skill shot thing. Like, you do have to aim them, and they do have travel time. So it's not like Necro Marks or Elementalist Meteor Shower, where you
Same
just
with symbols.
Yeah, instant, where it's just an instant AoE on the ground, and you can't really avoid it per se. I'd say grenades, if they did get hit by some sort of giant pass, they would not be, they shouldn't be hit that hard because they do involve, they're not instant. They do require both skill shotting and the travel time. Now,
going back to what you were saying about Earthshaker, it's strong, yeah, but I also think that it should stay that way because it's sort of what we were talking about. It has a pretty easily noticeable wind-up. I mean, you're flying through the air, for one thing.
Yeah.
Okay? That's kind of noticeable. If
Yeah.
you get hit by something like that, you kind of deserve to get smacked,
Yeah, and I do notice that a lot of people do dodge my Earthshaker, and I don't know, I guess you could say I'm just biased against my own profession at the moment because we are in such a balanced situation with our Signet that it's hard to really weigh any sort of like maintenance on my class because we're in such a strong position at the moment in PvP. Like the hammer nerfs were good, but they didn't really solve the core issue. And this is going back to kind of what we were talking about on Zipper's channel the one time. The warrior, the reason why we're in the situation we are with the Signet being so powerful is we don't have any sustain outside of it. This is kind of a recap for people who haven't heard us talk about this before or who haven't heard me talk about it before. Warriors, by design, have no sustain, no secondary form sustain baseline. We just have our number 6. Adrenal health is a trait. Shout healing and banner regen are traits. we don't have anything outside of our number 6 just as a baseline, whereas you look at every other profession, Guardians have healing on some of their weapons, they've got their Virtue of Resolve, I think that's the one, right? The healing one?
Yeah, that is the one.
They've got, let's see, Engineers have a secondary heal on their F1, Elementals have heals on all of their weapons, except I think maybe Focus and something else, like that combo doesn't have any healing. Not to mention access to water fields and blast finishers to hit those water fields with. What else? Rangers are kind of in the same boat, and kind of not. I mean, the whole pet thing kind of, I don't know, it's weird. Like, they do and they don't. They have a lot of evades, but only on certain kits. So they're kind of in the same boat as us. Necros, I don't even need to talk about Necros. They have an entire second health bar, and a lot of life draining.
Thank God.
And then, what are the ones I'm missing? Mesmer has clones and stealth. The whole mind game thing. Thieves have stealth, and Shadow Refuge straight up. As far as I'm aware, Shadow Refuge heals you baseline.
It does.
Yeah. And then I don't think I've missed any. Let's see, got the Guardian, the Warrior, the Thief.
We're talking about baseline here, right?
Yeah, we're talking.
Zero traits, just skills.
Yep, just skills you get baseline. Utilities are included, but if it comes from a trait, it doesn't count. It has to be baseline. And Warriors, we don't have any other form of sustained baseline like that. And that is a design issue for us, because that means that our number 6 has to compensate for it, and we end up in the situation like we have with the Signet, which is it's overtuned, and because of our kit that has a lot of mobility and kind of just general tankiness, that it's too much. Like, when we pop our invuln states, like Endure Pain, and we have Healing Signet running, it regens so much health because it's allowed to just free regen. But if you get us in any situation where we can't dodge, we're done. Provided we're not running a build that, like, say, whatchamacallit, Shout Healing or Banner Regen or whatever. But the thing is, those require traits, and those require actually very large trait investments, because it's 30 points down our tactics tree, which is okay, but it just doesn't have a whole lot there that helps us overall. Like, it doesn't, like, for example, our healing power, what those traits would benefit a lot from, just the passive healing power you gain from going on a trait line, that's not in tactics, that's in defense. So unless you're going a full, like, 30-30, like, defense and tactics setup, which is going to kill any sort of offensive power you have, you're not going to get the max amount of passive, stat increase for your secondary sustain that you're investing in, as a lot of other professions do. Because a lot of other professions, those trees do have healing as a passive benefit for going down that line, and it's just. And then you look at some of the other traits, like the passives and whatnot, that, yeah, in a group situation they're neat, but in a solo situation they're just not really worth going for. And the sustain issue for Warriors really doesn't show itself until you're in a solo or small group situation. So that's kind of that situation. And after you give your comments on this, we could probably go into what we were talking about shortly before you ended your stream earlier, which is talking about you were talking about how you liked certain trees and whatnot, and we were kind of going over that. So we could probably jump into that after your comments on this.
Absolutely. I'm not sure what their line of thinking is for balance. I'm not sure if it's to balance around a baseline like that, or are they taking into consideration traits? I would think it would have to be the latter, only because it's like you have to take everything into consideration when balancing, and that's fine. But I do agree. Outside of that, there's really very little sustain outside of your number 6. I mean, I consider sustain to be many things, but I guess in terms of, like, regeneration, I guess is probably where we're getting at.
Yeah.
Getting your health back. Yeah, there's very little. But, like, for sustain, I consider, like, stealth and bones of some sort, regeneration, blocking, Aegis. There's so many ways to look at least sustainability, that I think people tend to forget what it really means. Avoidance. Yeah. It's not just about getting that little cross sign on the bottom of your bar showing you regen health. It's about actually mitigating or potentially getting back your health in some case or another. And yeah, that's the problem that I've seen with the warrior baseline, is that outside of your number 6 healing signet, or regardless your healing skill in general, there's no way to gain back your health. So if you blow your skill too early or at the wrong time, and you don't have any other way to sustain yourself through maybe an invulnerable block, then you're looking at some trouble.
Yeah.
And that's an issue that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
So, more forms of sustainability outside of your number 6 would help. However, and if they did something like that, and they should, because having someone rely on one skill, I mean, there's a couple things that stack with it, but this is one of the main what's the word I'm looking for? One of the main problems.
Yeah.
But when you start to stack on like banner or adrenal health, then it starts to become pretty out of control. You're not supposed to rely on one specific skill, so branch it out. However, if you do that, you're going to have to look at other skills that provide some sort of sustainability and potentially adjust those accordingly.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you on that, where yeah, it's a problem, but if you leave things as are and you just buff something or you add some mechanic, it's going to become ridiculous, and you're going to have an even more out of control situation than you have now. Now, one thing that I've seen suggested a lot in various forums is giving, I shouldn't say a lot, but I've seen it suggested before, giving each warrior weapon some sort of block, similar to what you have with the mace main hand number 2. We're not talking anything like the number 5 on the shield. That's supposed to be a long cooldown shield thing. But giving every weapon some sort of block or mitigation thing. I mean, Greatsword has it with the number 3, the whirling attack. Shield and Mace obviously has it, but the axe doesn't have anything. The sword has it sort of, but the Savage Leap isn't an evade, so it doesn't really count. You can still be snared. You can still be damaged. What else do we have? The longbow doesn't have anything except maybe a blind, but that can be cleared too easily. You've got the rifle has nothing. The offhand sword has a block. Basically, just what I'm getting at is giving. It doesn't necessarily have to be regen for warriors, but we need more forms of sustain. More sustain of mitigation or recuperation, something.
I agree. I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, just baseline.
I can see that. Again, and I'm all for it. I don't think that's a bad idea. But if you were to do something like that, I would think, to balance it out, you would have to look at the damage of those weapons, because now you're giving that weapon, a form of sustain. Like, because axe has no sustain. It's all damage.
Yeah, it's all damage.
All damage with a little bit of control. I think if you start to add like a little bit of sustain, maybe balancing out would have to look at the damage itself. I'm not sure, maybe, but.
Well, in that regard, I would think the damage would just come kind of, or the balance would kind of come naturally, in the sense that you are removing a skill from that weapon that does damage to give it that block. Like, it's not, I'm not talking like, taking whirling axe and while you're doing the whirling you have evasion or a block. And I'm not saying anything like that. I'm talking you are replacing skills with blocks.
Right.
It might water down the weapon choice a little bit, but at the same time it will make it definitely will improve sustain in a sense, and it will also kind of improve the skill floor. Like, raise the skill floor, because if you don't use those blocks well enough, you're gonna die. But if you use them, if you time them well, you know what to look for, then you'll be all well and set.
Right.
Honestly, the thing about doing a change like that, though, is you're fundamentally changing weapon kits, which it's not gonna go over so well with a lot of people. Like, I would be for a change like that, but I also very much like a lot of the kits we have right now. Like, I do really like the axe kit. I like the fact that we've got a nice big damage auto chain, we've got a whirling attack with vuln application, and we have a toss that throws cripple. I do like that. I like that a lot, but it's, yeah, like, what I want to see and what I like isn't everyone's opinion. What everyone else wants to see. So it's one of those things where if they were to do a wide sweeping change like that, it might really turn a lot of people off from the profession. So
right.
It's
no, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, but
if you do something like that, you're going to be changing a lot.
Yeah,
then you're going to have to look at the overall sustain of that class. And
yeah.
adjust accordingly, because if you're giving more sustain, something needs to be, I think, taken away.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. Yeah, you're looking at, essentially, you're looking at completely removing. I'm not saying removing, but changing a skill, which I think didn't that happen with Final Thrust?
Yes. Yep.
What was it before? It was a bleed, right?
What happened with Final Thrust is it wasn't necessarily a total skill revamp. What it was is Final Thrust actually used to be on the end of the auto attack chain for the sword, and then we had Hamstring, which is now on the end of the auto attack on our number 3. And it was basically, before it was just an instant cripple for our number 3, and then we did a stab with a bunch of damage. It didn't have the 50% big damage boost before on the auto attack version. It was just a bunch of damage. Then they swapped those, and now you get basically what Hamstring was before on the end of the auto attack chain, and you get Final Thrust, which is a burst with a big boost for under half health targets on the 3. And what it did is it completely changed how sword is viewed as a weapon. Yes, it's still heavy Condi, but it's not as geared
Condi reliant?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not as Condi reliant, and it's not as geared towards Condis as it was before, because you don't have the instant cripple and in a lot of cases immobilize, because a lot of people would run leg specialist with it. Now it's more of a balance between conditions, control, mobility. It's kind of like this. It's almost like the appetizer weapon for warriors. You've got control on it, you've got burst damage on it, you've got mobility on it, and you've got conditions on it. It's almost like, the reason why I don't use it as much as I did before is because it's spread too thin for me. It doesn't do the damage I'd like to see for my personal tastes. Yes, it has mobility, but doesn't have enough. The control isn't as, like, the control can be removed, and the condition damage, if I'm using a power setup, isn't going to do much, and also the bleeds you get from Flurry don't last all that long. They last for maybe a second and a half, 2 seconds, maybe 3 each, and then they decay really quickly. Right. So it's a good weapon, but for my purposes, it just doesn't really gel very well. It's too spread thin. Now, don't get me wrong, the change to Final Thrust was a good one. The swap of those two was a good one, because the auto attack chain got faster and benefited. The number 3 got better, that benefited, but just the kit overall of the sword, I think it's too spread thin now, and it just doesn't have the strengths that it did before, where it was solidly a Condi weapon.
I think maybe it's because some of these weapons out there, some of the kits, again, they do too much. They're essentially the jack of all trades and the master of none. I mean, I can name a couple of weapons that are just like that, and I'm not a fan of that either. I prefer to specialize, but in some cases you can't do that, and I believe some of these weapons are meant to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. I prefer to specialize. I think that every single weapon out there should specialize into something. Have a little bit of something else, but it should be more geared towards something. Like whether it be support, damage, and then you spread that between Condi and physical accordingly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I see what you mean. That is an issue, because again, you're looking at your auto attack chain doing a bleed, and then out of nowhere comes your number 3, which is a physical attack. You're like,
Yeah.
Right, and I get that. That makes sense. I honestly, if it were me, like, I don't know the warrior as much as I would like to, but if it were me, I'd change it back to more of a condition weapon.
Yeah.
You don't really have too many Condi weapons. You have quite a few physical. You might as well go back to change it back to something else.
Yeah.
I mean, not something else, but what it was before.
Yeah, and like I could see maybe changing out Final Thrust for maybe something that's just a lot of bleeds that does even more bleeding when they're below half health or something. But yeah, just kind of shifting it more towards conditions, because that seems to be the general motif that the sword has going for that ArenaNet wants for the warrior sword, is that they want it to be heavy conditions. Because if you look at the offhand sword, it's all bleeds. It is all bleeds. And well, I take that back. It's torment and bleed. It's all conditions. If you got impale, which gives you.
They changed that too, didn't they?
Yep,
that used to do torment.
No, it used to do bleeds.
That's what I mean. It didn't used to do torment. They changed that. It's an interesting change.
Yeah, now it's torment, and it helped our condition situation. Yeah, but it's still condition based. It still has that mentality. It still has that general concept going for it. Whereas the main hand sword is kind of this weird. It's this weird mix of things. But yeah, the whole sustain thing, I don't know.
It needs to be looked at. You need to have something else.
Yeah.
There needs to be something there to give you a form of. Well, yeah, I guess again we talked about it. While you have invulns, and that is a form of sustain. If you're taking damage, this is going to stop you from taking damage, but not recoup any in return, outside of trading.
Yeah. Now, kind of going off of that, I just thought about something. It could very well be that our sustain is... Our sustain is there, even without Signet. The thing is, you would have to run so many very specific utilities, and you would have to time them so well that it's almost... The way things are, it's almost unfriendly for new players. Like, in order to have perfect sustain without Signet, and just go off of, say, Surge or whatever, you would have to time all of your dodges perfectly. You would have to use all of your invuln states perfectly. You'd have to have all of your timings down exactly the way you would need to have balanced sustain, and that's almost demanding too much from a player. I mean, I can see some really good players being all, like, it wouldn't matter, they could deal with it just fine, but for a majority of the players, including myself, that would be too much. Like, just having to do that for every single situation, you're almost asking too much, and the skill floor is just way too high in that regard. So that's why I'm not advocating like removing Signet altogether, because again, it is the design issue of we don't have any sustain outside of that number 6, and once you take away the sustain we do have, we're dead. We showed it on your stream once. We were fighting. It was your meditation build versus me using everything else exactly the same, with the exception of switching out Signet for Surge, and you outlasted me. Like, I think the issue with it is the cooldowns are too long on our invuln states or whatever to make not running Signet viable at the moment, because we don't have, like, again, we don't have any other base form of sustain, and that stops us. But I don't know. It's one of those situations where it's just we don't have another form other than our 6, whereas almost everyone else does, and it causes issues in fights when we're not using Signet. Now, go ahead.
No, please continue. You were on a roll with something.
Oh well, I was actually going to shift gears. So if you had any comments, final comments on
scene.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know what their thoughts are, and the only thing I can think of is I guess when you combine many aspects of this game that give sustain, such as the large health pools or low health pools, armor. I take armor as sustain as a much lesser degree of sustain, because the damage mitigation difference between light and heavy is so minuscule. It's hardly noticeable. I think it's like a 7 or 8% damage difference.
Yeah, it's tiny.
And again, you're looking at only one facet of the game, where it being physical. It doesn't do anything against conditions. So I think the whole argument about, yes, you are heavy armored, you do have that little extra mitigation. I don't think it's justified, honestly, to argue against that, because the mitigation you gain is so small that it's not even noticeable. If I'm doing 3,000 damage to you as a heavy armored target, I'm only doing like 3,300 more. I'm only doing 3,300 or something like that to the target next to you.
Yeah.
That's not going to make or break you.
Yeah.
Now, health pool, yes, that is something I can see being argued because it affects everything.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been, you know, the one thing I've noticed with physical and Connie damage, physical is affected by not only your armor, but health, weakness, and protection. So you're looking at 4 areas of the game where physical damage is affected, where condition damage is only affected by 2, whereas removal and health. So it's that whole argument with armor needs to be, if it were me personally, and I know this is going off the deep end a little bit, I would actually remove these tiers and do something else. That way balancing would be a little easier.
Yeah, you were mentioning before giving everyone medium tier health and armor.
Yeah, medium tier and medium armor. I mean, you can still, you know, wear whatever you wanted, I guess, but for sustain, I don't know what they're taking into consideration. Obviously, I would think the larger health pool would be part of it. I mean, what I would give for fucking 18,000 health, I'm telling you, dude. But it's not enough because there's so much burst in this game. Like, if I'm standing on a point, you know, small point, it's not going to do much for me, but it's my job to hold that point.
Yeah.
And then there's just massive AoE going off. That 8,000 is going to help you, but it's not going to do much for very long.
Yeah.
You're going to see how quickly that goes in an instant. It's going to be gone before you realize it. So, yes, that is a nice little area of sustain, but it's not as much as people may realize, especially with the amount of burst in this game.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of switching gears and whatnot. I guess I'm gonna do a little like kind of a little heads up for anyone who's joined the stream since we started. I'm not as responsive. I'm not going to be really responsive at all to chat during this, guys, because I am. This is a podcast type thing. So if I haven't responded to any of you, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just this isn't one of my normal streams. This is a podcast, so I'm just kind of focusing on the conversation with Arken. But yeah,
good information.
Yep, good information for anyone who hasn't had the heads up. Now what I was going to switch gears to, and this was, you had mentioned we kind of had this little thing going shortly before this podcast, but I didn't want to go into it too much because it was good material for it. We were talking about kind of the trait lines and how you were talking about how you liked a lot of the warrior trait line stuff, and then that kind of went into a thing about whatchamacallit, like how well each one is designed in kind of like a first and last thing. I guess just kind of give me your impressions of the warrior trait line so far, like which ones you liked a lot, and then I can kind of bounce off of them for more of an experienced perspective.
Sounds good to me. That's perfect for me because I'm playing my warrior right now, so I can easily open this up and give you an idea what I think. All right, I guess I could just start from the top, strength, and work my way down. Let's see here. Personally, I don't see anything spectacular with the adept traits and strength. You may see differently, but I don't, especially with like a skill like restorative strength where you use a healing skill to remove conditions. Everyone runs Signet, so that's useless. That's not going to do anything for you. It doesn't affect anything else except your number 6, so that's a useless skill right now because, again, of the lack of warriors utilizing anything but Signet. I'm moving up again. It's I do like distracting strikes when you interrupt someone, you give them confusion, but there aren't, for me personally, there aren't too many outside of like mace. There aren't too many disruptions that you can do that are fast. Hammer's not that fast from what I've seen in comparative. It's not. Shield is very easy to look at for shield bash. That's not too fast. And then shield, and then again, like rifle butt is the only one I can think of where you literally have to be on your target's ass for it to work.
Yeah.
So while this is a cool concept, I don't feel that it's strong enough. Now I'm looking at like some of these, like the stat increases, or like, you know, some of these easy, like, you know, so I call it the more boring traits.
Yeah.
Where they just give you a straight up damage increase or something. These are nice, and I guess they're fair, you know, with where they're at as being masters, like, you know, great like slashing power. That kind of makes sense. I would think that eventually they would, you know, change something like that to make it more interesting instead of just, oh look, you know, more damage. I think these are fair.
Yeah.
And then again, the Grandmaster. I like Berserker's power. That looks pretty cool. That looks pretty awesome. Nice little damage increase, but then not too much. Honestly, if I were to judge strength in terms of like how I how good I feel it is, I don't think it's that strong.
Yeah.
Personally, I think there's a lot to be desired. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about. There's a lot of classes in this game to where their strength tree or their damage tree on the top sucks.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. Now
Very few people take that.
Yeah. Now what I was gonna say is I could probably we could go like one line at a time rather than, because if you go through all of them, then I'm gonna have to go through and go through the entire thing again. As far as strength goes, from my perspective, it's a good tree, but it's not outstanding. It has good traits in it, but it's not like our other it's not like our defense or discipline trees, which I feel are very well done, or in arms as well. But it has neat traits, but they don't really interact with each other all that well. They're not synergistic with each other all that much. Like the restorative strength, at a time that was actually pretty not widely used, but it had a better place for the reason you were talking about. People were using their heals. It works incredibly well with mending. Now, mending in its current state isn't all that great, so you don't see it used a lot, but just it works well with mending as a whole because of how their mechanics are. And then whatchamacallit, Surge, it's fantastic with Surge because it gives you that snare clear. The only problem with that is Surge has a longer cooldown, so it just doesn't really work. Defiant Stance, I haven't really tested it. I don't really like Defiant Stance, but that's me. Now, you're talking about Distracting Strikes. That's like a prime example of one of the things where it just doesn't feel like it synergizes well with the rest of the tree. It's cool, but the thing is, like you were saying, we don't have a lot of kits that take advantage of it. And just the general stats you're getting from passively going down strength doesn't really work well with Distracting Strikes, because the only condition thing you get for going down strength is more condition duration. You don't actually get more damage. You get duration, which, yeah, longer confusion is cool and all, but it's not really all that spectacular. I think out of that trait you can get a max of like 8 going at any given time, just because we have so few interrupt skills, and yeah, like the max you can get up to is like 2 interrupts with any given weapon kit, like the hammer or mace shield. Maybe, nope, 3 with the mace shield combo, but again, it's probably going to decay before you can get that third set going. Now, Berserker's Power, yeah, that's one where it makes sense, but the thing about Berserker's Power, and there's actually another trait that does something similar down in Discipline called Heightened Focus, which gives you more crit based on how much adrenaline. Those traits, while they're neat, they encourage a playstyle that I don't like, which is sitting on your adrenaline. The whole
seems like the same thing as Signet, doesn't it?
Yes.
You're sitting on a skill that you just never pop.
Yep.
It's there.
It's very passive, and you're not doing anything with it. I'm not a fan of those traits specifically for that reason. That's another reason why I am not a fan of running certain, like the meta PvE build for warriors, because it encourages sitting on your burst skill and not doing anything with it. Anytime you are you're forcing yourself to sit on something that you should otherwise be pressing, it just doesn't jive with me. I don't like how that works. And Berserker's Power, yes, it's cool, yes, it's a nice damage boost, and it's somewhat interesting in its own right. It encourages a certain playstyle that it kind of kills it. As far as strength overall, yeah, I do agree with you that it's not as good as some of our other trees, but I do feel it is decent. It is worth going into. You're not going to hurt yourself by going down it. It just doesn't synergize well with itself or, in a lot of cases, other trees. It's kind of its own thing. And then like slashing power, or I'm forgetting what the other one was. The axe crit damage one. That one, they're neat, they're useful, but they're not all that interesting. But yeah, that's kind of my take on the strength tree. It's neat, it works, but it doesn't really synergize, and it's not quite as intuitive. It has some issues, some problem areas.
Right. That's just true.
Now, I guess
there are things that are mixed around there that shouldn't be.
Yeah. Now I guess moving on to arms.
Okay. I like arms. I'm just gonna straight up say it. It's a great Condi trait. Freaking great. And even then, even outside of condition damage specs, there's a lot of other traits I would take. Like deep cuts. Holy crap. I'm surprised this is an adept. I'll be honest with you. A 50% duration increase.
That one should be adept, actually.
You think so?
I think it is adept, like right now.
No, it is. I'm just saying I'm surprised it is.
Oh, okay.
Because 50% increase of anything, you know, is huge. Especially from a condition that benefits, you know, from, you know, stacking instead of duration. So that's pretty huge. Yeah. I like that. And there's definitely quite a few traits that I would definitely take in here. But there's a couple ones where I looked at it and I'm like, these are pretty useless. Like Rending Strikes looks like it's pretty shitty. And then again, that's, you know, there are very few traits that I could see myself not taking here, but there are a lot that I would see. Forceful Greatsword, another one I just can't see myself taking. You know, it's just doesn't seem like it goes very well with the tree. And then like the Grandmaster traits don't really jive with me as well. But I would have to say between the Adepts and the Masters, there's quite a few good ones there I'd probably utilize.
Alright. Well, it sounds like you have a very different opinion than a lot of warriors, including myself, on some of the traits in there. In regards to deep cuts, that one actually isn't as good as it looks. That one looks good on paper, but in actuality it's not that great. The main reason is a lot of our bleeds don't last that long, so a 50% increase isn't that much. Like, going back to the flurry example I was talking about earlier, each of those bleeds baseline lasts 2, maybe 3 seconds. So with that trait, you're only increasing it to maybe about... Oh wait, no, it's talking 50% chance more to apply, if I recall. No,
it's duration.
It's duration. It is duration. So, well, yeah, you're only going up to maybe a 4.5, maybe a 5-second bleed. Yeah, on Flurry, it's neat, but the thing is, one thing you gotta remember about bleed, it's very easy to cleanse. It's like one of the top priority conditions for a cleansing ability to go for. I've noticed this. I've tested this. And increasing the duration of said bleeds when they're already so short doesn't really do a whole lot. And when the entire condition can be cleansed so easily, it's just... At the end of the day, there are better traits. That's the main thing. I mean, it's not a bad trait, sure, but there are better traits. Mm-hmm. Then Rending Strikes, I was actually surprised that you said that one was shitty from your perspective, because that's actually a very good trait. You're basically giving your crits another way of increasing your overall damage by applying vulnerability. And yes, vulnerability can be cleansed, but we're talking every crit has a chance to apply vuln. And especially in PvE settings where your targets aren't cleansing, at least currently they're not cleansing conditions, that's really good because you're constantly applying more and more vulnerability with usually a setup that's already applying a lot of it, so you're getting way up there as far as stacks can go. In like World v World or PvP, it still benefits because you're adding vulnerability, and that adds to padding for keeping your damaging conditions from being cleansed, because the cleansing engine or whatever it uses for the system that prioritizes what to cleanse.
I believe it's first in, last out. I
yeah.
believe. So
yeah.
That's why burning is so hard to cleanse, because most of the time it's a long duration one hit.
Yeah.
It's not really refreshed, whereas bleeding is constantly refreshed. So
yeah.
I think that's how it works.
Yeah. And that would explain why bleeding is often removed first. But vulnerability, if it's first in... yeah, you said first in, last out, or first in, first out?
No, first in, last out.
Okay.
So, you know.
Fair enough. Well, even still, if it's first in, last out, then that's definitely the case where constantly stacking vuln on them would further keep your damaging conditions safe. And when you're running a high crit build, like say full Zerkers, or you're running Zerker Amulet, or Knights, or whatever, where you've got a lot of crit, that's a lot of opportunities for that trait to kick in, and you get vulnerability running on your target. It's the main reason why I recently switched my condition build in SPVP from Sword to X Sword, because the X applies a bunch of vulnerability. Now, the Grandmasters, let's see, you've got... I think it's Last Chance is one of them, and then the other was...
You're a warrior! What is this? Yeah, it is. I'm looking at it.
the thing is, the Grandmaster traits in arms I don't use very often. The main reason is they're not, like you're saying, they're not as good as you would think a Grandmaster trait would be. They're good, don't get me wrong, but there are better things to slot in that third trait slot than those Master or Grandmaster spots. Like, what a lot of condition builds will do is they will run 25 down arms. They won't run 30 down. They'll run 25 down. Because outside of a certain set of traits, there's almost like you get almost a form of diminishing returns on the traits that you can get in arms. You get a few like really good ones that synergize really well with each other, and then your third one almost kind of doesn't really work all that well. Oh, I remember the other one that you had commented on, Forceful Greatsword. That's actually a very good trait. Very, very good trait. In fact, that's one of the reasons why running down arms with the 5-sig deep strike build is it's such a recommended thing, because not only are you getting deep strike for the more crit, you're getting Forceful Greatsword, which then synergizes off of that extra crit that you're getting, not to mention the passive crit you're getting from going down the tree. Forceful Greatsword, that's why running arms with deep strike and a Greatsword is like a big, it's a build that is often pointed to for leveling for warriors, because it synergizes so well with itself. Now, as for the Grandmaster traits, Last Stand is good, but there are other traits that are typically better in more situations. Mainly because Last Stand is very RNG. First you have to have your target below 25% health, and then you have to have it not on the internal cooldown. You basically don't have any control over when it pops. It just pops and it's gone. I forgot what the other Grandmaster trait was. It was something that doesn't even really stack up against Last Stand. But that's the thing, like, it doesn't stack up to Last Stand, so it's not even worth considering. Basically, the arms tree, overall, it's probably one of, if not our best designed trait line, because it synergizes so well with itself. It synergizes well with the passive traits you're getting. It just works well with itself, and it works well with a lot of the kits we have. You got your cooldown reduction in there for both Greatsword and Sword. You've got all sorts of condition benefits. You've got burst damage benefiting off of your off of bleeding targets, which are just happening anyway because of the first minor trait. It just fits well. It does have flaws, yes, but overall I'd say it is one of, if not our best designed trait line. And I guess if you have any final thoughts, we can do that and then move on to defense.
No, I can see where you're coming from after you explain it to me. That's fair. Now, defense I find to be a awesome tree. Holy crap! Just looking at a couple of these, like Dog March, I'm looking at going, this has got to be one of the single best adapt traits I've ever seen in my life, because it's a one and done thing. You essentially not remove, but you dramatically decrease one of the most important aspects of this game, which is control on yourself. That is awesome.
Yep.
I would take that any day over anything else that I've ever had if I had a choice. Absolutely. That's amazing. The next one, I mean, there's a couple here, but I was just looking at that one saying, wow, that's something that, again, I can't see anything else being better here. You know, there's really not. I'm looking at it. There's really nothing better than that as an adept. Moving up, you got you actually, from looking at this, you have two really, really good masters here that I'm looking at. You have Cleansing Ire and Merciless Hammer. Merciless Hammer is a situational one, which is why I think it's fair. That's why, and I put it to great use. Yes, it's a situational one. If you can't disable your target, you get no damage increase.
Yep.
You get nothing. However, if you do, then absolutely that should be rewarded. Cleansing Ire is I think Cleansing Ire is a really strong one. It provides quite a bit of Condi removal. While yes, you have to actively use it, as long as you're using a longbow, it's going to happen regardless. Not everyone runs a longbow, and I get that. So it may not be guaranteed. It's huge, especially with how fast you gain adrenaline as it is. So I look at that as a very, 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 very strong master.
Yeah.
And then let's see, we have our Grandmasters. Which, you know, the weirdest thing is that some of the Grandmasters in this game, I look at it and just, they do not seem to be up to par with even some of the Adepts. So, look at that. You have Endure Pain, or Defy Pain, I guess you could say, and then Spiked Armor. Yep, this is the instance where I cannot see myself slotting any Grandmaster here. These are terrible. Terrible. Spiked Armor is terrible. Are you kidding me? No. Never in a million years would I take that. Endure Pain or Defy Pain seems like it's a pretty decent one. Nice little extra stance you got going on there. I guess if you're going full bunker or something like that, I could see that being useful, but I don't know. I'd see myself taking something else.
Yeah. Now, from my perspective, like I was mentioning before, defense is also up there as far as well-designed trees. However, it does have a few flaws. But all of our trees have some sort of flaw. But really its only flaws come from basically the Grandmaster trait options. Like, the traits that are set for Grandmaster aren't really worth being Grandmaster, like you were saying there. Defy Pain is nice, but it's passive. Again, you don't have any control over it, so you can't time it well enough to where it matters, really. And the Spiked Armor trait is decent because now it was terrible. It used to be 5 seconds and then a 15-second cooldown. They recently buffed it to 5 and 10, which
it's still terrible.
It's still not that good.
No, it's terrible because what people don't seem to understand is that retaliation by itself on one target is ridiculously underpowered. The only time retaliation is really strong is when you can apply it to your party and then there's constant AoE going down. That's when it's strong. It's not strong by yourself. It's actually very weak because the most you're going to be hitting someone back for is like 250 damage while they're hitting you for like 1,000. That's not going to do anything for you. Yeah. People say retaliation is OP. It's only strong in certain situations. It was never strong on a single target. Yeah. Again, that's why I think the misconception is there.
Yeah, in AoE situations, yes, retaliation is ridiculous, but it's similar to a lot of other things. In AoE situations, everything is very powerful. But like, it's a good thing that you play Guardian primarily because you have a lot of retaliation, so you kind of know how to manage it. Warriors, that's like literally the only, other than like outside sources, Spiked Armor is like the only place we get retaliation by ourselves. So we don't really have much exposure to it, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of the trait. Is just like the Confusion one up in strength, we don't. It's the only source of it, so we can't really do much with it. We can't really work it into builds because we don't have, like in the case of the Spiked Armor trait, it's not reliable. We can't base a build around it because we can't control when we get that retaliation. It's based on being crit first off, and from an outside source. We don't really know where, like, we just can't time it. We can't build around it. The Confusion one, we can build around it, but the thing is, it's not effective enough. But anyway, going back to defense, Spiked Armor is lackluster. It's not powerful enough for me to consider it being worthy of being in a Grandmaster. Maybe a Master, but
that's like adept worthy.
Either way,
like I said, it's only strong in a group. If that was to give your party like retaliation or something like that, then yeah, it would probably be Grandmaster.
Yeah,
but it's just to you.
Yeah,
and you're not going to be doing anything back to someone else.
Yeah. And then Defy Pain, like I was talking about before, it's one of those quasi ones where I could see it being either Master or it's powerful enough to where it should be Grandmaster, but it's unreliable to where it just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it should be. I don't know. I don't know what the case with it is. It's just strange. Now, as far as the tree overall, or going over the ones that we haven't done over. Dog March, yes, very powerful, very powerful. Hold on, my visuals are breaking.
That's okay.
Either way, the whatchamacallit, yeah, okay. Let me recollect myself after fixing the video.
Sounds good.
The Dog March adept trait, like you were saying, very powerful. The thing is, that's a newer trait. That's after they kind of had some more ideas, and that was like the first thing, one of the first traits in response to our situation regarding conditions. I don't know why this is breaking. There we go. That one, yes, it's very powerful, and yeah, it's one of those ones where I very rarely build without it. It's just that good, especially in a world v world situation where you can combine it with the condition reduction of Melandrews and the condition reduction of lemongrass poultry soup, where you have basically snare invulnerability, snare immunity, and that's a big thing for warrior kits where it just doesn't really. Or I should say, a big thing for warrior kits where it helps cover our weakness very well, which is getting stuck. Because if we can't dodge, we end up in a very bad situation. Moving up, going to Merciless Hammer and Cleansing Ire. Cleansing Ire is a very powerful master trait. However, like I could see it, honestly, I could see it being moved to Grandmaster. But it does have an inherent weakness, which is if you don't hit something, be it through just missing, just whiffing your burst, or being blinded, it doesn't go off, and you're stuck with those conditions. So it is strong, yes, but it does have that counterplay, or I should say, it does have the drawback of if you're not hit, you don't get any benefit out of it. Not to mention, it also relies on its full potential being based on having 3 strikes or 3 bars of adrenaline. 3 bars for certain builds is nothing. 3 bars is a cake to get, but a lot of builds they can't really build to go full ham on adrenaline generation because you give up a lot of other things. But it is a very strong trait in and of itself. With the longbow, yes, it does go off pretty reliably, but the thing is, longbow, after the nerf they did to how quickly it generates adrenaline, it did take a bit of a nerf. It's still powerful, but it does have counterplay. It's strong, but not super crazy overpowered. It does require activity on the part of the player. Merciless Hammer, that one I think is in a very good spot for the reasons that you said. You do need to have a certain situation. You do need to be able to control your target for you to get the benefit out of it, and that type of gameplay is very well. I'm kind of losing my train of thought on this, but basically, yes, Merciless Hammer, worth being in Master because it requires situational stuff, but it's powerful when those situations happen. Also, there's kind of the running thing where all of our cooldown traits are in the Master Tree. I think they kind of did that with a lot of pretty much all traits across the board. You find a lot of weapon cooldown traits in the Master Tree because it's right in the center, right in the center of the tree. So it's easy to get, but at the same time you do have to invest a little bit. And then the reason, and going back to the Grandmaster thing, the 2 traits, they're overshadowed by Master traits in the defense tree. That's why my Hamtastic build, for example, you see me running 2 Master traits for the Master and Grandmaster slots. You don't see me running any Grandmaster traits because I'd rather run Merciless Hammer and Cleansing Ire together than either one of them have to choose between those 2 and then run with some subpar Grandmaster trait. But overall, defense is very good. The minors in it are very good, aside from, I think, our first minor, I think, is kind of lackluster, but our second and third minor traits in that tree are very good. Adrenal health is amazing, and they actually recently buffed, I forgot what, it's armored something, armored assault, maybe, I don't remember what the name of it is, but it gives us power based on our toughness. That one's very good. They actually recently buffed it, so we're getting even more benefit out of it, so you get more damage out of a defensive build. But yeah, overall defense is one of our better trees. It's up there with arms, but it does have flaws. Now, moving on to tactics, we're going to have to kind of speed through these ones because we were going to go for like an hour, and we're rapidly approaching that mark, so I guess we'll kind of go through them more quickly for discipline and tactics and discipline, so go for it.
Alright, Leg Specialist, good. Everything else sucks on Adax, unless you're running a banner build, in which case Inspiring Banners is good. Let's go to the next one. Shake It Off. I like that. I think that's a nice one. Just, you know, because again, if you're running a banner or a shout build, this is a nice little extra shout for healing if you wanted to. I like quick breathing too. I think only because the way you can remove condies from it is also very nice. Or I'm sorry, convert them on short cooldowns. They're only 15 and 20 seconds respectively. So that's actually, I think again, for a support build, that's actually really nice. And then a Grandmaster, if you're doing like, I think both of these Grandmasters are excellent if you're doing a support build.
Yep.
Just think that, you know, a nice little 2k heal on your shouts or, you know, permanent regeneration is also really nice.
Yep.
So I have no problem with this tree.
The Tactics tree can either be very good or very bad, from my perspective. If you are in a situation, I understand that it is a support tree, so running it solo is, it's kind of counterintuitive. It's like, why are you running the support tree while solo? So in a solo situation, I don't like the Tactics tree at all, specifically because it's geared to be our support tree. The beef I have with that whole situation is because that's where our other form of sustain is. Our other main form, our secondary form of sustain is, which is the shouts or the banners. But like going from the bottom up, Leg Specialist is almost mandatory in a lot of builds. If you're running a melee build at all, Leg Specialist is necessary because you need to be able to get to your target.
Yeah, you want to talk about getting to your target.
Yeah, I know. I see where Guardians are. Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely necessary as a trait if you're running any sort of melee build, and it's even nice in range builds where you've got, say, you're running rifle. The number 2 is a cripple. You throw leg special on there, you've got an immobilize. You can keep them from dodging. Then moving up, quick breathing is very good. I actually use burning arrows a fair amount, like my fractals build, for example. Since it is a group support build, but I do want to do damage as well, I have burning arrows in there as an extra source of damage when I'm running the longbow at range. It's one way to capitalize on all of the might I'm getting from the other part of that build, which is in arms, Forceful Greatsword. I'm building a bunch of might with that, and then backing out into range, and then I'm getting a bunch of extra damage from all the might, as well as that trait. The master traits for tactics are really good. Or they're good.
They're pretty decent.
They're pretty decent.
I don't like empower. And I'm sorry to cut you off, Shin. I just wanted to point this out. You know how like every class has some sort of ability, like, you know, empower allies, where you constantly give your allies a 150 boost to something.
Yes.
Whether it be for you power, you know, me,
I think,
I get toughness.
Yeah, I think Rangers get precision.
Like, precision. Okay. I don't think this is how they should do it. Only because, I think the number should be different based on the stat, because all stats are not created equal.
Yeah.
They're not. Toughness does 150 toughness does not equal 150 precision or power.
Yeah.
Same with the other two. It shouldn't be the same. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
However, I will say this, and I just noticed this, so I'm probably going to retract my statement. This is a master trait.
Yep.
Whereas the one I have is an adept one.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one on the Guardian, it's an adept trait.
And if I recall right,
that's how they balance it.
Yeah. If I recall right, the Ranger one is also a master.
Okay, then never mind. Forget what I said. That's probably how they balance. Because that's fair then. Because toughness, it doesn't scale very well. As much as power or precision. So okay, forget what I said. That works. I didn't realize that was the case.
Yeah. Now what they did recently in the arms tree is there's empowered, which is you deal more damage for. Actually, I think it was Empower Allies was the one that got changed. They actually recently moved Empower Allies to Master, simply because of that reason. Because a lot of the setups that were out there were running Empower Allies for their PvE meta builds, and it was getting kind of out of control. But yeah, as far as Adept Leg Specialist is very powerful. Some of the other traits in there are okay, but they're not the greatest. Like if you're running a banner build, I think it's I forgot what it is. It's a banner cooldown trait. It increases the radius and reduces the cooldown of banners, which is a very good trait if you're running a banner build.
Banners?
Inspiring Banners, that's what it is. No, Inspiring Banners is the no.
That's the one.
Isn't Inspiring Banners the healing one?
No, they have very similar names. That's called Inspiring Banners, the one you just described.
Yeah.
The Grandmaster is called Inspiring Battle Standard. So
oh, that's what it is. They're both inspiring. Yeah. I don't pay attention to my own trait names half the time, especially not the ones I run. And then yeah, the two master. I believe there's 4, but the two major ones Burning Arrows and well, Burning Arrows, Empower Allies, and Quick Breathing, those are all very good for Master. And then Grandmaster, yes, they're two very good traits for group situations. For solo situations, the investment does not justify, or I should say the benefit doesn't justify going that deep into the tree if you're trying to find another form of sustain. That's the main issue. It's not a good way of making up for our lack of secondary baseline sustain mechanics. Overall, tactics good. It's very good for what it seems to be designed for. It's very bad for anything else. All of our minor traits are based on reviving. That's in a group situation, yeah, fine. But even still, the goal, it's almost counterintuitive with the minor traits. They're all based around reviving. The goal of the trait line is to keep your allies alive and standing. So
yeah,
it's almost like
situation with Guardians.
Yeah, it's
exactly
like
what you're talking. I
yeah,
can't stand those.
It's like the whole point is to keep them alive and doing things, not reviving them. It just don't. That's why I have such a big beef with the tactics line. Is our minor traits are not very good for that tree or anything in general. It just, they're nice to have, but they're not. It just doesn't work well. There should be other traits there. If anything, take those traits and combine them or make them into major traits, so that way if you do want them, you can put them there, but you're not forced to take them and waste those minor traits. Because minor traits, while they are a bit lesser than their major trait counterparts, they still make a difference. Adrenal health is like the poster child for that. But yeah, just do something to where we're not forced to take crappy minor traits and turn them into a major trait or something, and then give us worthwhile minor traits. If anything, make it so you have minor traits that, you know, help with the support of a group. They don't necessarily have to be good for a solo roamer or a solo person, but make them jive with the tree's overall idea in a way that isn't involving rezzing people who you've evidently failed to keep up, or who have failed to keep themselves up with all of your support.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I cannot stand those types of traits. It makes zero sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Your job as a support and bunker is not to wait for someone to go down to get them.
Yeah.
Your job is to keep them up as long as humanly possible, because they're not effective on the ground.
Yeah. So overall, tactics is okay for what it does, but it has a lot of problems, and it's terrible for solo. And that's why I have the biggest beef with it, and that's why I think it's our least well-designed tree. And finally, we can get down to discipline. Go for it.
Take a look. Let's take a look, boss. All right. Okay. This one kind of seems like it doesn't really synergize too well. Seems like some of these should be like in the tactics, like inspiring shouts where you gain adrenaline when you use a shout. Seems like an interesting one. I like warrior sprint. I like that. That's pretty cool. Now, granted that you could probably take something a little better like vigorous focus for vigor on stances, seeing as how that's the spec nowadays is with stances and signet. That's where this is just shadowed by, you know, that specific trait. But I do appreciate warrior sprint just the way it's designed. That sounds pretty cool. Let's see. Let's look at the masters. Destruction of the empowered. This one, it's an interesting trait. I don't like how they handled the boon hate in this game by utilizing something like that. They could have done something else, but I guess this is the best they could come up with at the moment, so that's fine. Let's see what else. Mobile strikes is a nice little one, because again, I would assume that like whirling wind or yeah, that's what it's called, right? That utilizes that. So if you're immobilized and you use that, you're automatically, you know, knocked out by it, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, you're talking on the great sword, the number 3 whirling. I think it's whirling strike. Or whirling attack.
Something whirl. Whirl.
Warriors have whirling everything.
Yes, you do. And then heightened focus on Grandmaster. That's pretty cool. That's another one that, again, it seems like it would synergize well with like going 30 into strength, because both of them take advantage of just sitting on your adrenaline. So I don't like how this. Honestly, I'm not a fan of how this tree is set up personally, because of something like that. And a lot of the other traits don't seem like some of them are subpar. Like, I like mobile strikes, but that's pretty much the only one I like, honestly.
Now, from my perspective, discipline is an amazing tree. Discipline is it's in the same vein as strength, to where it doesn't really synergize with any of the other trees. However, it does so for a different reason. It's because it's that good. It's not that it synergizes like things interact in like intricately with another. It's just good to have. It has a lot of very good benefits overall. Something that fits well with anything. The minor traits that you're talking, or the adept traits you're talking about, a lot of those are very good. I personally use the Vigor on stance because of the need for my build to dodge and avoid damage. Warrior Sprint is another good one for melee builds. I don't like it because I have to choose between the two, and I'd rather have Vigorous Focus, but it is still a very good trait. That's actually a newer one because because Warriors didn't have any sort of real passive form of movement, and were like the melee class. So, or one
Screw you.
yeah, Guardians, whatever. But Guardians, whatever.
That's what he freaking said. Awesome.
But yeah, like Guardians, I feel should get something sort of like it. But it is nice to have for a melee heavy profession. And then the last one, Signet Mastery, is another good one. It's very nice for builds that have a lot of Signet activation. There are builds out there that take advantage of that. And then moving up, Mobile Strikes is very good for SPVP or builds that do not run the anti-snare cheese like I do. It's definitely a good one for that. It's very good for sword builds and for great sword builds because of Savage Leap and Whirling Attack and Rush, as well as Bull's Charge, the utility. So Mobile Strikes is a good one. Empower of the Destructually Empowered. This is one where it's good unless the target has no boons for the majority of the time, or they run protection. You would think this would be the perfect trait against Guardians. Guardians have a lot of protection uptime. You get a maximum of, I think, 28. Yeah, 28 damage increase on a full boon target. Protection is a 33 reduction, so you're not outdoing protection. If they're not running protection, but they have every other boon, it's a very good trait. However, that doesn't happen very often. And also, it doesn't happen very often because it doesn't happen very often for two reasons. One, protection is usually part of the giant boon spam kit. And two, you don't really see that many boons on someone unless they're running Lissas, which, hey, guess what, has protection. And other than that, it's just not a massive increase. I take it because it's more damage, and I don't really need to take Mobile Strikes. But it's replaceable. It's one of the first traits I go to replace if I'm going to do something else in the arms tree. Like Sharpened Axes is a good example of one that I typically slot instead of Destructionally Empowered because it's good, but it's replaceable. And then the Grandmaster traits, Burst Mastery is one of the best traits we have. Period. Just straight out, it increases our damage and reduces the amount of adrenaline spent on burst skills. When you've gone far enough into the tree to get that trait, you're already running a 30%. You're running a 30% reduction on the cooldown of burst skills. It's straight up one of the best designed and most appropriate Grandmaster traits I have seen for Warrior. I can't comment on other professions, but for Warrior, it is easily one of our best, if not the best, Grandmaster trait we have. Because it synergizes well with our kit. It is perfect for where it is. It's strong enough. It does what needs to be done. It's just very good. I like it a lot. The other Grandmaster trait, Heightened Focus, is okay, but it's good, but it has two problems. One, it's the same thing as Berserker's Power. It encourages sitting on adrenaline. Also, it runs into the situation of going over the crit cap. Like, when you're at 100% crit, you don't get any benefit out of it. If you're running Heightened Focus on a crit-heavy build, which is usually what it's coupled with, you're going over the crit cap and you're wasting stats. It runs into that problem. Where Berserker's Power is straight damage, so it doesn't have this issue. Heightened Focus does. You can run over 100% crit chance and waste stats. I mean, 100% crit chance is awesome, but you might as well go for Burst Mastery or something else instead of it. Now, as far as like the discipline tree overall, like the passive stats you get from it, very good. You get crit damage, which in a crit heavy build is very nice, and you get cooldown reduction on your burst skill, which baseline burst skills are pretty low cooldown anyway. But any reduction on a cooldown is good in my book. So it's definitely nice to have. Then the other thing that makes discipline so good.
Fast hands.
Fast
That's
hands.
Ridiculous.
Fast.
That needs to be, I'm sorry, dude. I love you, dude, but I think that needs to turn into a major. That's huge.
The thing is,
You don't think so?
the thing is, the other two traits that do that, I believe, are also minors. The Elementalist and the Engineer have similar traits, one for attunement and one for kits, respectively. If they're major, and then I definitely agree with you. But the thing is, the Warrior is very, very, very reliant on swapping weapons. Very reliant on swapping weapons. And this, arguably, I would say move it down to add it, but that might make it a bit overpowered. But honestly, Fast Hands is the Burst Mastery equivalent for minor traits. It is that good. It is by far, it outpaces Adrenal Health. It outpaces the Bleeding Crit trait in arms. It's just, it's really, really good. It is our best minor trait as far as I'm concerned, because it allows us to do more things. It allows us to use our kit more effectively. It's just so good. That's why I like Discipline a lot, because it fits well with any other build. Purely because that's why every build I make has 15 points in Discipline, purely for Fast Hands. So yeah, overall, it has a lot of really good stuff. It doesn't need to synergize well, or it doesn't synergize well with other trees because it doesn't have to, because it's just straight up good for pretty much any setup we have. I can see there are some kits where like you need the points to go into another trait line. Then yeah, it's fine. I can understand not going any points in Discipline, but as far as I'm concerned, I refuse to make any Warrior build without at least 15 points in Discipline for Fast Hands. It's Discipline is. Go ahead.
I'm saying, again, I understand the argument for, constantly swapping weapons, but I would think that, couldn't that be an argument for almost every single profession? Because it's like, you constantly do need to swap. I mean, I guess attunements would be the same thing in that regard, but it would, to constantly swap weapons into something, sort of like lessens the room for error.
Yeah.
Because if you realize that you had a skill that you could have used, you realize that you have half the time to get it back, whereas someone else may have double that time, which is understandable. It's just it's a nice one, man.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it. It's a nice trait. It is a master adept. A minor. I get that. I don't know what they should do with it, or whether they should just keep it. It's honestly out of my hands on how they should fix. I don't even know if it needs to be fixed. It's just one of those things where it definitely helps lessen the margin of error because of constantly swapping back.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that I feel is one of the defining traits that makes Warrior as fun as it is for me, is the fact that I can be so active. But what you just brought up there actually made me think about something. What if they just simply made all weapon swapping baseline 5 seconds? It would make combat more active. It would have a larger margin of error for people who weren't skillful enough with their choices in swapping, because I've noticed myself do this a number of times, where I'll have the perfect opportunity to do something, but I'll swap instead and miss out on that opportunity, and sometimes it'll cost me the fight, sometimes it won't, but it's still a big thing. And people who just mindlessly spam weapon swapping will run into that situation, and it'll kind of help the skilled players differentiate themselves from the non-skilled players.
Potentially.
And add another place where a lesser skilled player could improve themselves. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. I don't know what all of the ramifications of doing so would be. I think it would be a cool idea because it would make combat more active, but either way, as it stands, a 5% reduction on a 10-second cooldown for weapon swapping is very good, and it's almost mandatory for a Warrior, in my opinion. But yeah, overall, Discipline is very good, and it doesn't synergize well because it doesn't have to, because it's just good overall.
Right. I can see that.
Or I should say synergize intricately. It synergizes well with everything. It just doesn't. It's not intricate like, say, bleeds and then crits and then all the stuff with arms. But yeah, that's my take on that trait. Yeah. If we were doing a longer podcast, we could probably like go more in depth and like go over each individual trait and like how like the ramifications of everything. But we obviously don't have that. We've already gone over time anyway. So, did you have any final thoughts on anything or whatnot? Because we can always do more of these. We can always do more podcasts and get more time. And it's just. Well, it's only been an hour. Yeah, time.
That is true. Yes. I don't know. It's this one was heavily focused on a specific profession, which is fine. I don't know. It's hard to say. I guess because we sort of went from a more generalized discussion to a more specialized one.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It's just I don't know. There are quite a few changes that need to be addressed. It's as relevant as it sounds. I mean, I'm beating a dead horse every time I say it. But that also needs to be looked at. I don't know. It's without going with just discussing the warrior side of it. I can't really go too in depth on what else I would talk about. But if we were to include like other facets of the game that need to be adjusted, I could definitely give you a more specific opinion on it. Like we talked about, AoEs needed to be looked at.
Yeah.
I actually, when you were talking about potentially reducing the weapon swap to 5 seconds on every profession, that doesn't sound like a bad idea on paper. However, when you're looking at the cooldowns for a lot of skills, they're on pretty decent to somewhat long cooldowns, so having the ability to constantly swap back and forth may not be a good idea for something like that. Only because you're swapping back and forth, and you realize that those skills that you were looking for may still be on cooldown, and you just potentially may have wasted a swap.
Yeah.
So it may work, but it's something that needs to be adjusted or tested as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I suppose since we kind of went focused on the warrior for this one, maybe the next one we could go more on guardian, and then we just flip the girds. We could flip the perspective, because you're much more knowledgeable than I am about guardian. I've played my guardian up to about level. Well, I've played it about 8 levels because I used one of those experience scrolls to get it to 20. But
that's so cheap.
I know it's like 28 right now, but I essentially have the same amount of knowledge on the guardian as you do on warrior. So yeah, maybe the next time we do this, we could go more ham on. We could basically do the same thing we did with warrior for the guardian, and then we could kind of go over. I could play my guardian a few more in the whatever duration between, maybe like week or whatever, and get a feel for how I feel things are, and then you could comment on them that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that'd be fine.
Okay.
I mean, more specialized more specialized discussions are absolutely are a great idea. But eventually we're gonna probably have to branch out and get everyone, get another profession in here, which I don't have too much knowledge on, unfortunately, on the opposite side of the spectrum. So
yeah.
Maybe. I'm actually really for it, but again, we would probably have to get someone else in here.
Yeah, honestly,
like an Ellie or something, or
Honestly, the Twitch Guild Wars 2 community has a lot of very knowledgeable individuals of every profession, so we could very easily pull from that as a resource. But yeah, what do you think for the next time we do one of these? Maybe next Sunday or?
Let me see. Let's take a look. Just a quick look. I'm kind of curious when I'm actually working. Okay. What's today? Today is Sunday, right?
Yep.
I completely forgot that today is Sunday. I'm working Tuesday. I'm actually off Sunday. Look at that. There you go. I am off Sunday, so we can do next Sunday if you'd like.
All right. Sounds good. Maybe same time?
Absolutely. We can do that as well.
All right.
Crap, I literally just had one something else that I thought was a little bit of important discussion. I just lost it. I'm trying to think. It's oh right, class discussion outside of the ones that we have knowledge on. This is something that I feel very heavily on, and don't take this, not you obviously, but don't, in general, people don't take this the wrong way when I say this. Just because you are good at a profession doesn't mean you have the knowledge or the insight to want to change it in the more proper way. For instance, what I mean by that is that a good player, or rather a person who wants to see the betterment of this game, they won't just look at buffs for their profession. They will probably be looking for more nerfs more than anything else.
Yep.
So that's how you know you're looking at someone who actually wants to make this game better, not just to make their class stronger.
Yeah. Good example. I am 100% for nerfing Signet as long as we get another form of sustain. I would not mind removal of Signet as long as we got some other form of sustain. Like, that wasn't our 6.
Absolutely, that's what I mean. Exactly.
But yeah,
along those lines, to where you realize that something is, wrong with your profession that is way too strong in a specific area, relying on something that needs to be looked at. So I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what I'll do for the next one is I'll try and do, like, say, a stream where I play a bunch of Guardian gameplay, so we have that for the background visuals, because it was appropriate that we had, Warrior gameplay during heavy Warrior discussion. So I'll see if I can get some Guardian gameplay going, unless we want to do it over on yours, and then, whatchamacallit?
No, you're more of a popular guy, dude. It's going to be yours.
Okay, fair enough.
Use a populist, man.
Alright. So yeah, I'll see if I can get some Guardian recordings going, and then we can have that as the background for the next one.
You're going to be bored off your ass, you know that, right? You're like, I need to go on my Warrior. I guarantee it. Just like a minute in, I'm like, I told you.
Well, I'll probably do it in like SPVP, just that way I'm not getting stomped in World v World, because it's a low level. But yeah, so we'll say tentatively for now, next Sunday at 3 my time, 4 your time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm for it. Okay.
Alright, I am going to go ahead and stop the podcast here. Thank you to everyone who came out and hung out. Again, for those who weren't around when I said it a couple times earlier, I wasn't as responsive because this was a podcast. I wanted to focus on the conversation with Arken. I know there have been a lot of people who have been discussing a number of very pertinent points in chat. Yeah, I wanted to keep it focused on the discussion. So, thank you guys for coming out here. I will be uploading this to YouTube soon enough, and we will see what's going on. I will be streaming later on the Bloody Tech channel, so that'll be happening in probably, well, like an hour or so. So yeah, I'll be over there. But yeah, I will close it out here. Thanks everyone for coming out, stopping by. This will be available on YouTube for stuff. I'll also make a highlight of it.
YouTube.
Alright, I'm heading out. Arken, go ahead and say your goodbyes to the people hanging out here.
Yeah, take care, man. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Yep. Be sure to check out Arken over on Big Heart Gamer on Twitch. Go ahead, if you've got chat open, go ahead and link it, Arken.
Alrighty.
Everyone obviously knows where I am. This is my channel.
This is, yeah, I mean, this is the Shin's channel, where it says it right there on the top.
And for those who are wondering, this has all been previous gameplay. I have not been playing this entire time. Alright,
He's been fooling you all.
Time Bomb actually beat you to it. But yeah,
Bastard.
Big Heart Gamer on Twitch, that is Arken. So go and check him out as well. But yeah, we will see when we can get back. Hopefully it'll be a week from today. So take care, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I will be back on the Bloody Tech channel in like an hour. So see you later.